Thomas Plekanec finds his way back to the Canadiens as the team undergoes a reset, which is nothing like a rebuild. This is Hockey Inside Out, Summer Edition. Welcome to this week's show. I'm Adam Susser, and here today with me in studio is Stu Cowan, CBC Daybreak's Jessica Resnack, and Mr. Jack Todd. Here's what we're going to be talking about on today's show. Number one, are you surprised that John Tavares and Paul Stastny did not want to come to Montreal as free agents? Number two, was bringing back Thomas Plekanec to the Canadiens a good move by Marc Bergevin? Number three, Marc Bergevin refuses to use the word rebuild, but isn't that what's happening with the Canadiens? Number four, do you have confidence in Marc Bergevin to rebuild or reset the team? Number five, is there any way the Canadiens can compete with Toronto now that they have John Tavares? Let's start the show. As the two highest valued free agents that were available during free agency, was it a surprise to you that John Tavares and Paul Stastny had zero interest in coming to Montreal, keeping in mind, panel, that the Canadiens only finished 28th in the league last year? So things could have been a lot worse. What do you think?
Not surprised at all. I think I mentioned in the show here last week, if you were John Tavares, give me one reason why you'd want to come here. It's just a case of this team isn't very good. And when the team isn't very good, all the other factors weigh in more, whether it's the weather, the media, the fan scrutiny, the language issue, everything else weighs more. And in Toronto, they're a young, exciting team with a chance to win, and John Tavares decided to go there. And Stastny, who wouldn't want to go to Vegas? Yeah. It's become a popular, believe it, at this point last year, who would have thought Vegas would be a hot spot for free agents to go to? But that's the way it is now. It's a reality.
Same with you. I'm not surprised at all that John Tavares had no interest in coming to Montreal. Paul Stastny, I thought maybe there could be something, with his
Quebec connection.
Yeah, with his father with the Nordiques, and maybe he might be interested in coming here with it. But then when you saw with Vegas, the tax situation there, it's such a cash grab for them, and it's a great team. A lot of people are going there and saying, I like what Vegas has been able to do, and they want to join that ship that's going on there. So I can't say I was too surprised that they weren't going to come.
Nice lifestyle in Vegas too. They all live in the suburbs there in Vegas, right on a golf course, nice weather year round. No shoveling.
Yeah, I don't think it made sense for them. I don't think it made sense for the Canadiens either. Yeah. Even Tavares wasn't going to put him there. And a guy like Stastny, he's just basically to be a bridge to when these kid centers are ready. Take Plekanec. He's a lot cheaper. You're not going to have to sign him for so long. I think it was a no-brainer on both sides.
The thing I found interesting with Stastny is he signed a 3-year deal, which I think would have worked okay here. Like I think a 5-year deal for Stastny would have been too much, but would he if he had agreed to come here, would he have agreed to come here for 3 years? One of the other problems the Canadiens have, when free agents do come here, they have to overpay them. They overpaid Andrew Shaw. He wasn't a free agent, but after they traded and he negotiated, they overpaid him. They overpaid Karl Osner. They have to, the guys who do come here, they have to overpay them. So I don't think Stastny would have come here for 3 years. I think he would have wanted more. And you're right. If he did want more, good for Bergevin not giving him more.
The team freed up a lot of money to try and get a big free agent, but haven't done so far. What do you think they're going to do with that money? Anything, or is it going to be like a repeat of last year?
Well, it gives them flexibility to do things like they did with Steve Mason, which I thought was that was very deftly handled. Unusually smart from that head office, to be able to just buy the guy out, kiss him off. You've got the cap room that other teams don't have, so you can make deals like that. It gives them that kind of flexibility. Fans are ranting and raving. Why aren't they spending? Well, why spend $13 million to bring in a bunch of guys who make you finish 4 spots better than you're going to finish anyway and still out of the playoffs? It makes no sense. If I suspected that Molson was being Eugene Melnyk, I would be on him like you know what. But I don't think that's the case. And one day when they start to get better.
The optics are bad, though.
Yeah,
when you see a team like the Canadiens and their ticket prices and their $14 a beer or whatever, and the owner is pocketing $8 million that the GM didn't spend. But Bergevin got them in this mess last year when he didn't have a plan B after Markov and Radulov both said they weren't coming here. He had no plan B, and he was left with this money and he went the whole season. Now he's had more time to work on it, and it looks like he's going to have even more money left over this year. But as I said, the optics look bad because you talk about the playoffs and maybe a team makes, let's say, $2 million a playoff game. Well, $8 million, that's 4 playoff games, and $14 million if they're that much below this year. So it doesn't look good. And Bergevin got himself in this situation by the mess he did last year. But I agree with you, Jack. I think to spend the money just for the sake of spending it at this point right now doesn't make much sense.
And I think it's going to be difficult to attract talent to come here because there's nothing really going on. There's nothing that's going to be a huge change. change. Now, let's just say the season gets going and they're playing better and things start to look different, then maybe it's a different situation next year, and then you kind of hold on to that money because then you have the money to sign these agents that might want to come to Montreal.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have been to the Jazz Fest, but that's a reason to come to Montreal. It's a fun time. Describing his decision to sign a 1-year, $2.5 million contract with bonuses, Thomas Plekanec was quoted as saying, "A big part of the decision was I wanted to get back to the playoffs. I think the future is pretty good." Is he on crack?
What else is he going to say, though, right? He's not going to say we're not going to make the playoffs and come here.
Real question is, was it smart for Bergevin to bring Thomas Plekanec back?
Look, I don't mind Thomas Plekanec coming back. I still would have thought that they could get him for cheaper than $2.25 million plus the $1.25 million he could make in bonuses. I thought you could get him for $1.25. I know he said that he had other offers, and his family being here in Montreal was not the only reason why he came back here, but it makes life that much easier than to uproot your family. He's 35 years old. How much more time does he have in the league? I know they said Chicago was interested in him, so if he moved his whole family for that, it wouldn't really make sense. But I think seeing that they're going with the youth movement, that they're going to wait for their young centers to be develop and be players that are ready for the NHL, have Thomas Plekanec there, not as a 1 or 2 center, but if you have him on the third line, you can live with it. He's a good guy. He can be a mentor, and it might pay off in the long run.
I think he is going to end up being a 1 or 2 center, and I think that's the problem with bringing him back. I know a reliable source told me that the Blackhawks offered him more money, and that's probably why Bergevin had to up the money he did, but not to match Chicago because he really did want to come back here. But to me, Thomas Plekanec would be a better fit. I thought he was a good fit in Toronto or with a really good team as a third or fourth line center who can move up if needed to fill a second line role. But in Montreal, the reason they brought him back is because they haven't been able to develop anybody else. Galchenyuk, they don't think these young kids are ready, Kotkaniemi and Paling, so he's a stopgap for them going up, but to me, it's almost a step backwards. And I like Thomas Plekanec. I like him as a player. I like him as a person. He's a classy guy. He's a veteran player. He'll be a good leader here for a year. But I think it's a bit of a step backward, and it shows how they haven't developed any young guys to come up and fill the role that he's going to fill here.
Yeah. Do you think he'll act as a leader, though, in the dressing room? He's also a good playoff performer.
He's a good leader. He's so well respected in that locker room and by the players, the media, everybody. You won't hear anybody say a bad word about Thomas Plekanec.
Yeah, you have to see what's going to happen here. Everybody forgets there was a reason the Canadiens went into the tank last year, and it really had nothing to do even with Radulov or Markov. Your all-world goaltender went walkabout, your stud defenseman was hurt all year, and your sniper forgot how to snipe. I mean, it was that simple. Like Red would always say, you're as good as your best players, that top 3 or 4 guys, and especially when one of those top 3 or 4 is Carey Price. And when Carey Price becomes Andrei Rasico, you're in big trouble. And, that's why it wouldn't completely surprise me if they come out of the blocks with a good start, if everybody's healthy, everybody's playing well. Then all of a sudden you're in a position where, this could be a playoff team. So then what do? Do you go out and reach out on a trade, come to the deadline, try to bolster yourself for a playoff run, which isn't going to likely go too far, but might get you to the first round or the second round. They're going to have a lot of decisions to make if they play well. And if they don't, maybe they get a shot at the Hughes kid.
Well, the issue with those 3 guys, too, Patrick, we don't know if he's going to be back.
Yeah.
Price starting the 8-year, $84 million contract. Will he be Carey Price again? I don't think he can be for a full season. I think he's going to be up and down like he has been a while. And Shea Weber coming off that foot surgery.
Yeah.
Is he so there's a lot of question marks going forward with this team.
So Marc Bergevin refuses to use the word rebuild. He prefers the term reset. Aren't they the same thing? I don't know. Is that what's happening?
I think as long as, if you're in an out-and-out rebuild, you find a way to move Price. That's where the rebuild would start. So in that sense, I think it is a reset. But, they're not taking a run seriously at anything this year or next year. So that's a rebuild.
I think they should rebuild and try and trade Price and try and trade Weber and try and trade Shaw. But there's, Shaw's got injury issues also, 3 concussions and knee surgery. Carl Alsner. I mean, they're stuck with it. That's probably, it can't be a rebuild because it's going to be hard, even if you wanted to trade those guys, who's going to take them? I mean, Carey Price, somebody would probably still take him because there's still, another bad season, though, and he might be untradeable. Weber, you can't move him until he proves that he's recovered from his foot surgery. Alsner, I think, eventually going to end up buying him out. So even if he wants to do a rebuild, I don't think he can because of the situation he's put himself into. So it's a reset. It's like, as I wrote in a column this week, he's sort of throwing pucks at the wall and hoping something sticks, and we'll see what happens.
It's really just patchwork that he could do, as you mentioned, that the ones to do a real rebuild, it's going to be difficult to trade them, or if you do trade Carey Price, it's basically saying that this will be a completely different organization, and I don't know how many people would be 100% okay with it, but I think that would be the only move that they could really do. If you look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, that year that they finished dead last, there's only 3 players remaining on that team. So they really did a whole fire sale there. That being said, with the Canadiens, I don't know, would Charlie Lindgren really be the one to take over then as the goaltender for the Canadiens? Is he ready for it? So it's just a more difficult situation with Carey Price and the huge contract that he has.
I think Montreal fans are at the point they would accept the rebuild. I think they'd be happy if they, okay, so we're rebuilding, play all these kids, play them, let them make mistakes, let them grow, let them build, let them come up together and grow together like the young Oilers team did in the past, like the Leafs are doing now. Make their mistakes, grow up on the ice, grow up off the ice together, and then build something 3-4 years down the road. But I just don't see the situation they're in now, how Carey Price and Shea Weber, you're sort of wasting them.
If Price comes in and has a good season, if he's really back at the trade deadline, you can maybe make a really useful long-term deal then. Same with Weber if he's healthy.
Do you have confidence in Bergevin's reset of the team?
I wrote at the end of the season I thought he should be replaced, and I think he should. On the basis of his 6 or 7 year record, especially having had a terrible offseason last year, I thought he should go, but he didn't. Oddly, I don't get to hire and fire GMs for the Canadiens, and they'd probably be much better. But since the season, I've been impressed by what they did. At first, I didn't like the Galchenyuk trade, but I've been hearing all these rumblings about Galchenyuk's father for a long time. And you know, when I saw Pat Hickey's piece detailing the problems with the father, I thought he really had to go. And now maybe it's going to work in Phoenix because maybe Rick Tocchet will take him out in the old man out in the desert and beat the crap out of him, and then something will work. But to get back to Bergevin, something has happened there since the end of the season. Like I said, they're having an attack of smarts, which is unusual. The Galchenyuk trade really with, Domi is definitely going to have a better attitude, whatever else. But especially that Armia deal, that was the most deft little trade I've seen him make in the years he's been here. Where you got picks, you did the little salary thing with Steve Mason, and you got a pretty good-sized, useful player at the same time. Now, if everything they do proceeds along those lines, it's not, you didn't get Drew Doughty, you didn't get Sidney Crosby, but you made some nice little deals. Maybe he can hang on and be a useful GM. You have to hope so, because we don't get to fire him, so we're stuck with it.
Tocchet might actually just do that with Galchenyuk's dad, but I
hope so.
I think Bergevin and the Canadiens also take some responsibility for that situation, because why was his father given the access that he had? I mean, we'd see, after games, Alex running out of the locker room to see his dad outside the room, and his dad telling him what he did right and wrong. Why was he allowed to be there? Why did the Canadiens allow that to fester?
Sidney Crosby's father went off on me when the year after he was drafted, and the season was about to start, and I wrote that he's not necessarily going to win Rookie of the Year because it was a 2-year draft class coming in, and there were a lot of really good players in that class. And I mentioned some people, and I must have had a dozen long emails from Crosby's father just ripping the hell out of me and ripping all the other players that were drafted, like Jeff Carter and people like that. And you heard a few rumblings like that from Crosby's father, and all of a sudden, boom, not a sound.
Mario Lemieux put an end to it. He talked with the father and said, "We'll take care of your kid. Back off."
Exactly.
And he did. And again, I wonder why the Canadiens...
That should have been done here.
I mean, there's a lot of crazy hockey dads out there. Anybody who's ever had a kid play hockey at any level, there's a lot of crazy hockey fathers out there, and Galchenyuk's dad lands in that mold. But going forward with Bergevin, it's... The stuff he's doing now and saying now, if it was year 1 or year 2 on the job, I'd say, okay, but it's year 7.
Oh, yeah.
He created this mess. And then when I showed up at the evaluation camp and I see the kids with these T-shirts with "attitude is everything" written on the back, I'm thinking, is this a midget hockey team or is this a professional
We're back
hockey
at no
team?
excuses
Like back
again.
at no excuses. Like really? This is the Montreal Canadiens with "attitude is everything" on the back? I thought it was Mickey Mouse. It's like some people didn't make it a big deal. I just thought it was Mickey Mouse. And it'll be interesting to see if the NHL, can you imagine handing that shirt to Shea Weber at training camp? He might throw it in the garbage can. So Bergevin created this mess, and he said it took a long time to create this mess, and I don't have much faith in him fixing it. I think it's going to, although as Jack, you're right, I think he's made some better moves, but long term, I I don't see him.
Yeah,
turning
my
it down.
suspicion is that there's somebody else in that front office working out something like the Armia trade, because he's never shown that kind of subtlety before. So
Maybe. Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Mark Bergevin just knows that his leash is very short this year, and I would not be surprised if Jeff Molson's starting to put together a list of possible people who could take over that job, and maybe having that pressure that Bergevin knows that he could be out the door if they have another really bad season. Might make him maybe think moves, like double think them, just not do them just because he thinks it's right, to just go over them and make sure that the right moves to make.
what do you think a year from now, Joel Bouchard is the GM and Dominic Ducharme is the coach?
It's possible. I mean, the one thing with those hirings, you wonder if Bergevin made those hirings, or if that is Jeff Molson saying, okay, I'm keeping this guy, but I'm setting everything
down
up.
the line,
and the fact they still haven't hired, as of July 4th, they still haven't hired a new defense coach. How does that work in also? I think it all fits together. I think you have Dominic Ducharme ready to step in if Claude Julien doesn't work out. You have Joel Bouchard either ready to step in as an assistant coach or possibly as a GM also.
So considering where the Canadiens are and where Toronto is now, with the addition of John Tavares, do you think there's any way that the Canadiens can compete with the Toronto Maple Leafs next year? Is it going to be a blowout every game?
If Carey Price wins the Vezina Trophy and the Hart Trophy,
gotta be
that's
that
the
good.
I just with the
Greg,
defense the Canadiens have.
To me, the Leafs are going to be an entertaining team that scores a lot of goals and wins bleep all until they get some help on the blue line. That's where I thought they would go with all their money, and they would go back and get another center.
Or they could be like the old Oilers, where they used to tell Grant Fuhr, Grant, only let in 3 or 4 goals and we'll win.
We got it.
And we'll handle the rest. And you look at Grant Fuhr's the Hall of Fame, you look at his stats. They're not very good. Like, you look at his goals against average and that. But he was basically, as I say, him and Bernie Parent, in my opinion, are 2 of the greatest goalies ever, because Bernie Parent with the Flyers played half the game. The other team was on the power play half the game, and he still played well. And Grant Fuhr basically was left alone to play goalie while these guys went out and scored
That's how
goals.
Dryden perfected leaning on the stick.
That's it.
He had nothing else
The big
to do.
3 in front of him. He just sat there like this. You're right. So I think you're right, though. I think one thing I'm really looking forward to watching the Leafs. I enjoyed watching them last year. They were a fun, young, entertaining team, and they're going to be even more so this year. So.
Okay, well, that is our show. We want to thank you at home for watching. We want to thank the panel for being here. Do you have confidence in Mark Bergevin's reset? Let us know in the comments section below. That's it for now, but we'll be back towards the end of the summer. I'm Adam Susser, and I'll see you soon.